the original Animal Crossing, introducing yourself to a new villager goes something like this. What? So you think you can just come up and start talking to me out of the blue? Well, your name might be laughed at, you'll be told that letters you've written are awful, and that you're talking too loudly. Compare that with the villagers from recent games like New Horizons, and the difference is night and day. These modern villagers are universally pleasant. They're friendly, almost to a fault. Even villagers whose personality is meant to be cranky or snooty will give you a friendly greeting. So what's with this major shift? What happened to villagers laughing at you, shouting at you, telling you to just shut up? Well, to find out, I dug through interviews with Nintendo's developers from over the past 2 decades. We'll look at why Animal Crossing's villagers used to be so rude and why that's now changed. Part 1. Grumpy Neighbours. So, in order to understand why Nintendo toned down Animal Crossing's rude dialogue, we need to understand why this dialogue exists in the older games. Animal Crossing got its start when game designer Katsuya Eguchi moved hundreds of miles across Japan in order to join Nintendo. He was just 21 years old at the time, and leaving his friends and family behind wasn't easy. In an interview, Eguchi said, "Animal Crossing features 3 themes: family, friendship, and community. But the reason I wanted to investigate them was a result of being so lonely when I arrived in Kyoto. When I moved there, I left my family and friends behind. In doing so, I realized that being close to them, being able to spend time with them, talk to them, play with them, was such a great, important thing. I wondered for a long time if there would be a way to recreate that feeling, and that was the impetus behind the original Animal Crossing." And so, Katsuya Eguchi teamed up with another young game designer at Nintendo, Hisashi Nogami, to design a totally new type of video game built around the idea of community and communication. The duo wanted this new game to teach players to talk with neighbours and meet new people. And not all of these people would be friendly. What? What do you want? Why all the noise? It's still early for some of us, nutcase. According to Hisashi Nogami, we wanted players to talk to each other about things the animals had said, but there are also some that say scary things. Katsuya Eguchi added, "If a small child is playing and an animal says something a little difficult to him that he doesn't understand, I hope he'll then go ask his mum about it." So, in other words, the game's various rude villagers were put there for a reason, in order to foster communication. In real life, meeting new neighbours isn't always smooth sailing, and for children in particular, coming face to face with mean people within the safe environment of Animal Crossing could be great practice for the real world. In fact, Katsuya Eguchi described the game as a sort of conversation practice in one interview. And that practice would be no good without the darker side of human life. He gave the following example. The seagull Gulliver makes all these dark jokes. I'm sure a kid won't understand them. I imagine he would have to go to his mum and ask her what the seagull was talking about, and the mum would then have a hard time answering. So, when Animal Crossing launched in Japan on the N64, it became a surprise hit. Nintendo quickly ported the game to the GameCube, where it became even more of a success. Before long, Eguchi and team began work on a follow-up for the DS. This game, Animal Crossing Wild World, was even more successful, with rave reviews and sales of over 11 million. So, when Nintendo announced a third entry for the highly successful Wii, it seemed inevitable that Animal Crossing's sales would just keep rising. But when Animal Crossing City Folk came out in 2008, that didn't happen. In fact, the game barely cracked 3 million copies sold. That's kind of a disaster. And so, Nintendo had to ask themselves, was the game's tone holding the series back? Part 2. Crying Children. With the failure of Animal Crossing City Folk, Nintendo decided that the next game, New Leaf, would serve as a fresh start for the series. It truly would be like turning over a new leaf. 2 new leaders would be put in charge of development, Isao Moro and Aya Kyogoku, who would go on to lead the Animal Crossing series to this very day. To broaden the series' appeal, Kyogoku and team added lots of new customization options, with the player becoming town mayor. But alongside adding new gameplay ideas, Nintendo wanted to sand down some of the series' rough edges. For instance, the rude dialogue from previous games. Take Mr. Rossetti, who would yell at players who'd forgotten to save before quitting their game. Some of his dialogue was really aggressive. Take this interaction from Wild World. Ah! What? What's in your head? You think I wouldn't notice? You think I'd let it slide? Not likely, punk. You're a real piece of work. You know that, kid? Nintendo wasn't sure this kind of dialogue was appropriate for the new direction of Animal Crossing. According to director Ayako Goku, we weren't really sure about Mr. Rossetti, as he really divides people. Some people love him, of course, but there are others who don't like being shouted at in his rough accent. Late Nintendo president Satoru Iwata added, "It seemed like younger female players in particular are scared. I've heard that some of them have even cried." The harsh dialogue from early Animal Crossing games was intended to teach players to communicate with all kinds of different people, sure, but it wasn't meant to make kids cry. And so, in New Leaf, Rossetti only appears the first time the player quits without saving, and he's pretty polite. Then, as the mayor, you can choose to build Rossetti's Reset Surveillance Center, after which the character will keep reappearing. But for players who don't like Rossetti and his scary rants, you can go the whole game without seeing him more than once. And it wasn't just Rossetti. Giving players the role of mayor could have put a lot of stress on their shoulders, but the team went out of their way to make sure villagers would never complain, no matter how bad of a mayor you were. According to director Isao Moro, even if you don't fulfill your duties as the mayor, no one will complain. Kyogoku added, "No one's going to say, 'Come on, mayor, get your act together.'" So, in other words, the team took a lot of trouble to make this newest Animal Crossing game more inviting than ever before. And while the harsher dialogue from older games was put in with good intentions, it would often put players off, limiting Animal Crossing's broad appeal. With New Leaf, Nintendo decided that needed to change. But of course, these changes didn't come without consequences. And now, almost 15 years after New Leaf, this new tone has had a lasting impact on the series. Let me explain. Part 3. Everyone's nice now. In case you didn't know, Animal Crossing's villagers are classified into 8 different personality types. For male villagers, there's lazy, jock, cranky, and added in New Leaf, smug. For female villagers, there's normal, peppy, snooty, and from New Leaf onwards, big sister. In older games, the difference between, say, a peppy villager and a cranky villager would be pretty huge. The friendly personality types would be eager to get to know their new neighbour and would look forward to talking to the player each day. Meanwhile, cranky and snooty villagers could be harsh to players, telling them to shut up, that their outfits sucked, or that they just didn't like you. The idea was to create a kind of microcosm of a real-life town or village. But when Animal Crossing's developers sanded off those rougher edges, each personality type began to blend into one, I think. In New Horizons, I personally find it really hard to differentiate between some of these different personalities. The only standout is Jock, and that's just because jock villagers won't shut up about sport and exercise. Anyway, in a lot of ways, Nintendo's efforts to broaden Animal Crossing's appeal were a real success. The series has never been more popular, more widespread than it is now. But cutting down on the darker parts of these games comes with consequences. Many feel that the villagers from New Horizons lack a kind of depth that villagers from older games had. Even Tom Nook, the loan shark raccoon who forces the player to work for him in early games, is just a lot friendlier in New Horizons. Series producer Hisashi Nogami explained, maybe because he's taking care of the player a little bit more than the previous series, maybe you may sense that he's gotten nicer. But you see, in the older games, there was a kind of satisfaction in getting to know your less friendly neighbours, talking to them each day and getting them to like you slowly and surely. That satisfaction just can't be found in games where cranky villagers are just mildly bad-tempered. In an interview 10 years ago, Animal Crossing creator Katsuya Iguchi spoke about his favourite villager, the angry pig Rasha. That's my character. I get angry easily. People used to point that out to me. I used to write the text reflecting that kind of personality. But Rasha is actually very nice and very polite. He's scared of insects actually, so appearances can be deceiving. You know, it's like when kids played in the city, there would always be an old man that would come up and say, "Don't do that, it's dangerous." It's that kind of scariness. It's not a bad person trying to do a bad thing. It's a person who is trying to teach and guide people towards good. That's the idea behind that personality type. Scary, but in a good way. I think that the newer games do lack something as a result of missing characters like these. I'm not saying we should bring back villagers who yell at you or call you fat even, but at its best, Animal Crossing really feels like moving to a new town and getting to know your new neighbours, and that's just not as fun if all of those neighbours feel blandly pleasant. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Videos like these are made possible thanks to my kind patrons, including Aaron and Catherine, Arthur Nicole, Brett Prophet, Cyprian Eov, Daryl Jero, Duran, Fresh Poetic, Jim Gilsonen, Kieran Chan, Kinugu, Lucas Little, Michael Gunter, Robinstick, Skator Pie, and Thomas Sutherland.